Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Parks. Minister, Tuesday's federal court judgment exposed just how inadequate the reserve activity assessment process for development in public protected areas is, and just how complicit the Parks and Wildlife Service now is in privatisation of parts of the state's most precious public conservation treasures. Not only did Parks conduct the most scant and low-bar assessment of the Lake Malbina development, it did not conduct a wilderness impact assessment. It either didn't consult its own expert advisors or it chose to ignore them, and it failed to consult the owners of the land, Aboriginal people and Tasmanian people. In fact, as Justice Mortimer confirms, Parks and Wildlife manipulated the development proposal to avoid scrutiny of critical elements of it, such as the impact on Aboriginal cultural heritage, and it attempted to game the federal EPBC system. Minister, can you confirm this is the same corrupted process that will be used to push through Stage 2 EOI proposals, all of which are secret, including a proposal to privatise for exclusive use Encampment Bay in the Maria Island National Park, for another Ian Johnson proposal to cash in on public protected areas?
Thank you. The Honourable Minister for Parks.
Well, Madam Speaker, I'm very pleased to get this question from the member, following on from yesterday. Look, Madam Speaker, I will make the point. That once again, persecution under privilege is what this member is engaging in. Persecution under privilege. Any reading of that federal judgment, which she had obviously not read yesterday when she waded into this place, any reading of that federal judgment would indicate, Madam Speaker, that in terms of Stage 2 of that assessment process, should it proceed in terms of the Hackett's desire in the original proposal to have a walk to an Aboriginal heritage site, Madam Speaker, that it will go through all of the necessary planning processes and will be referred to the EPBC if required. If required. That is what happens, and you know that. And you know that, Madam Speaker, and it is time that we called out the member for Clark, the Greens and the Wilderness Society for this persecution of a young Tasmanian family that simply wants to get on, showcase the best of Tasmania to the rest of the world, and in doing so, Madam Speaker, assist our economy to grow and create jobs, Madam Speaker.
Point of order on relevance. The Minister for Parks was asked about a specific proposal to privatise for exclusive use Encampment Bay in the Maria Island National Park, and can he confirm that the existing RAA process will be applied to that proposal as well?
Yes, I ask the Minister to be relevant. Thank you.
Well, Madam Speaker, there was a lot more to this question than just that, Madam Speaker.
That.
And Madam Speaker, and I'll seek some advice on that, and I will respond to the member once I have that advice.
As the member knows, I can't put words in your mouth.
Well, Madam Speaker, as I've just said, I will seek some advice on that, and I will respond to the member when I have that advice to hand. But I want to make the point, Madam Speaker, that the member needs to be called out on this. And I want to ask the question: were you aware that the Hacketts have had death threats?
No, I wasn't. And if you're going to try to blame
Madam
us for that,
Madam Speaker, there were death threats made against the Hacketts. Publicly, Mr Hackett stated that, I understand, back in June, and it just surprises me that the member would attend a Wilderness Society public meeting, Madam Speaker, and to quote what she said in October, and Madam Speaker, I find it difficult to believe that she is not aware of what the Hacketts had said in terms of the persecution and the threats that have been made. And the member said, I think it's really worthwhile placing pressure on the proponents.
Absolutely.
Really worthwhile placing pressure on the proponents. A young Tasmanian family that have had death threats, Madam Speaker,
Madam Speaker. The Minister for Parks is treading on some very dangerous territory here, trying to accuse us of whipping up fear and loathing. Well, the point of order is I take offence here when he connects any threats that have been made to a proponent to our advocacy for public protected areas.
Okay, so what was your point of order?
I take offence. I ask him to withdraw the imputation that we are responsible.
I think it's a bit of a long vote. So,
Well, Madam Speaker, I didn't say that they were responsible, Madam Speaker.
You imputed.
I asked if she was aware of the fact that the Hacketts had made it perfectly clear that they had had death threats, that they were being persecuted unmercifully through this process. And then, as a leader in the community, somebody whose voice is listened to, that she would go on a podcast Madam Speaker, this public meeting which was YouTubed, as I understand it, Madam Speaker, live streamed, and actually encourage people to put pressure on the proponents. Madam Speaker, the member for Clark needs to accept that what she says, some people will take heed of, Madam Speaker. And in an environment like this, which is highly charged, where a young family have had death threats made against them, for her to continue with that call for persecution, Madam Speaker, I think is beyond the pale. It's beyond the pale.
Point of order, Madam Speaker. The minister is just being offensive now. He is deflecting from the question. There is no persecution here. Placing pressure on proponents who are part of a corrupted process.
yes, okay, you're not making a point of order, but I think this is a very relevant thing for this whole House to think about. Language matters, as Ms O'Byrne often tells us, and I do think we do need to be mindful of our actions, not only in this House but outside this House.
Madam Speaker,
now, I'm going to allow the Treasurer to proceed.
Madam Speaker,
He would just answer the
Madam
question.
Speaker, I have answered the question. I've answered the question.
No, you haven't.
I said that what I would do is seek advice, and I would come back to the
When will you bring it
member
back?
at an appropriate time.
Ms O'Connor,
Once I have that advice.
I ask you to refrain from
But Madam
interrupting.
Speaker, the point is about language,
It
and
is.
language does matter. And we have a young Tasmanian family going through a process both at a state and federal level. Madam Speaker, doing everything that is
Dr.
required.
Woodruff. Now listen, this is the end of this. I know it is a motive argument, but I'm not going to put up with this constant interjection. When a question's been asked, the Speaker has the right to speak to it.
Well, Madam Speaker, I would call on the member for Clark, the Wilderness Society, to ensure that they take heed of the fact that there are people that will listen to what they say, that will take action that they deem to be appropriate. And quite frankly, in the past, Madam Speaker, that has led to death threats against this family. And the member for Clark, in terms of the language that she uses in this place and the arguments that she places, and importantly, in terms of what she has said publicly, that has been live streamed in terms of putting pressure on the proponent, which is a young Tasmanian family, Madam Speaker, is beyond the pale, and you should be called out on it.